So this is going to be a video on developing safe right hand technique for electric bass guitar, or plucking hand technique. And the way that we're going to do this is we're going to be talking about the neutral position. Now we talked a little bit about the neutral position in the left hand video, so just to recap for those people who haven't seen that, the neutral position is the body's most comfortable way of playing bass guitar. And the way that we find this is we're going to hold our arm out and let it go completely limp, and hold up the whole apparatus by the shoulder. So let everything go relaxed. The wrist goes relaxed, the fingers relaxed, everything's relaxed, everything's just being held up by the shoulder. And then let it drop. Everything drop. Now just using the shoulder and then jutting the elbow up over the bass, raise it and keep everything else relaxed, the forearm and the wrist and the fingers. And then here is actually the neutral position for the right hand. Now this might look a little awkward just because everything's being held up by the shoulder, but you'll see that it's actually the safest way of playing. I'll show you why. The first thing that we'll notice is that the elbow is up above the bass, significantly so actually. Now why is that? Now a lot of people, myself included at one point, will play with the elbow dropped behind the bass and the forearm resting on the bass. Now what ends up happening when we're doing that is you get this thing happening, where the wrist is actually bent and there's a significant amount of tension on the wrist. Now a lot of people will figure out a way not to play with so much tension, but it ends up not being the safest, most effective way, because obviously if you held out your arm like this, your wrist isn't bent with tension on it. Now, I just want to say something. There's a lot of professionals and a lot of people who are able to play that way just because they figured out how to play without that much tension. I personally would not recommend it. It's a lot easier for me just to play with the elbow above the bass, and for support, you can rest your forearm against the bass so long as you are keeping the elbow above it, just so your shoulder doesn't get tired, because otherwise your shoulder can get pretty tired just always being held up like that. A couple other things to mention about the neutral position. Your fingers are all going to be slightly bent and relaxed, and this is how you're going to be plucking like this. You're not going to be bent like that plucking, or just doing completely straight finger plucking with the fingers, with the joints of the fingers locked. Another thing that's important is that the thumb's actually going to be slightly to the left of the index finger. A lot of people might suggest playing with the thumb in between the two, and there's a few reasons why I'm not going to suggest that for you. Let's take a look at the three main philosophies for placing the thumb on the bass. There's fixed anchor, there's movable anchor, and there's floating thumb. Now I'm not going to advocate any one of them, since I from time to time use all of them. I just want to show you how to best use your thumb in relationship to keeping the elbow up above the bass and keeping everything relaxed. So with fixed anchor, this is going to be the most difficult, because if you notice, if you keep the thumb relatively close to the hand, or close to these two fingers, as you're going up, your wrist actually has to go forward, jet forward, and then you're going to get a lot of tension against the wrist. And even if you keep the wrist straight and the elbow nice and relaxed, what ends up happening is once you get to the high string, your elbow is way the heck out in front of the bass, and obviously that's not what you want happening. So instead, what you're going to do is you're going to pivot to the side, like this. Now this is going to be a little bit more difficult with the basses with more than 4 strings, but the bassist Tony Gray, I know, uses a method similar to this. But that's the way that you're going to have to do it if you're going to keep the elbow relaxed and the wrist relaxed and not do this sort of thing. So the other two techniques, movable anchor and floating thumb, don't quite have the same problem as fixed anchor, because you're not pivoting against everything. But they do require some specific guidance. The one thing is that your shoulder is actually the one that's doing all of the work in guiding your hand to which string you're going to be playing. It doesn't really quite matter if you're using movable anchor or a floating thumb. It's the shoulder which ends up determining where you are. Once you are where you are, it's very important also to remember that the only thing that's moving while you're plucking is your fingers. Now a lot of people might pluck from the whole arm or something like that. That's a very inefficient, and it can be actually harmful way of playing if you're not completely relaxed from the shoulder and from the elbow. So while you're going up and down, just remember it's the shoulder that's doing all the work. Anyway, I hope this gave you some ideas for reevaluating your right hand technique. We're not going to get into specifics determining the niceties of each individual method, fixed anchor, movable anchor, and floating thumb. But all of the ideas revolving around the neutral position will apply to all of them and help you develop a more safe right hand approach.